Hail and welcome. We are Loki Lavelle, a plural system with a passion for the fantasia of identity. So in this video, we want to talk about our unique experience of being plural. So to be plural means to have two or more distinct identities, which can control the mind and the body at different times. We have dissociative identity disorder, or DID. Because of the nature of DID, it often comes along with symptoms of amnesia and delusions. The way that we experience amnesia is, instead of having a full-on blackout of memory loss, it's more like what some people call a gray out. Often, if we think about things long enough, we can at least dredge up like a foggy recollection of the memory. But there are times where we do have total blackouts. There are a lot of chunks of our childhood and even our adult past that we can't remember at all. The amount of times that people have brought up memories with us and we can't recall. The other day I looked at my Amazon account. I apparently bought a pair of elf ears. I don't remember doing that. There was a time recently where we were walking home. We distinctly remember crossing the street, but then 5 minutes later or so we came to and realized that we had crossed the street again without any recollection of doing so. We often have amnesia about our interactions with people, particularly if it's an interaction where we have to mask a lot. And even more often, we can't recall the person that we had the interaction with. We might be able to recall the interaction, but it's hard for us to place like a face and a name. Because amnesia is obviously really inconvenient. If we're having an interaction with somebody who clearly remembers us, often we'll just kind of go along with it, pretend like we remember, unless it's an occasion where like we really do need to be aware. Like sometimes we will ask, but if it's just like a casual encounter with some person that like we didn't spend like a lot of time with or anything, then it's just not worth it to disclose the fact that we don't remember. Thankfully, our amnesia doesn't typically affect us that negatively. I mean, it's a nuisance, but in general, it's not debilitating. Unless it has to do with some sort of emotionally intense conversation or event. It's not uncommon for us to just completely forget what we were even talking about, what even happened, what we did, what the other person did, gone in the blink of an eye. So with this understanding of what amnesia can kind of look like for a DID system, it's not hard to see how delusions can occur, because when amnesia happens, the mind just kind of naturally tries to fill in the gaps, but it's often very inaccurate because it doesn't have enough information. It can result in assumptions being made, which can obviously cause problems. It can lead us to think that we did something we didn't do, or that we didn't do something that we did do, so it can be tricky. Thankfully, we're getting a little better at asking the people that we're interacting with for clarification, or at least beginning to trust them a little more when they say like, nah, you're remembering that wrong. The delusions can feel very, very real. It's very disorienting. The information is just gone, right? So it's natural for the mind to just try and piece together what happened and to be told you're wrong, like, no, that's not how things actually happened. It can be really hard to take and really hard to process. So switching means to change, alter. I've been trying to think of ways to describe what switching feels like, and it's comparable to the feeling of when, say, you've been really depressed for a while, but then you find yourself actually enjoying yourself in some way. And you suddenly realize that, hey, I actually feel positive right now. And you feel almost like a different person. Switching feels similar to that, but it's more complex. It's more than just switching emotions. It's switching an identity completely. That's like the closest comparison I can think of. So it's like the previous identity fades into the background, including all of their priorities, their interests, their emotions, their perspective, fades into the background and is replaced with the next alter. And often after switch is when amnesia occurs. A major cause of amnesia in DID is because of the fact that each alter can have different memories, and these memories aren't necessarily shared between alters. So when we switch, we often don't even really notice. Lately, we've been practicing being more aware of when that happens. Switching could take a split second to upwards of even days. It doesn't usually take that long for us, I don't think, but it can take hours. And during long switches like that, we're often very dissociative. Switching isn't always obvious for us. In fact, for most of our life, it hasn't been obvious at all. I will say that in embracing our plurality and allowing each alter to exist as they are, as individuals, our switching has become a lot more noticeable, both to ourselves and the people around us. And that comes with pros and cons. When a switch is more obvious in the middle of conflict, that can be hard to navigate, but where it's more obvious, at least I'm able to be more aware of it, and the people around me are able to be more aware of it, so it can be worked through more appropriately. Another way that it's definitely a benefit that our switching has become a little more obvious. One of the reasons our switching has become more obvious is that we don't feel that we have to mask as much and kind of neutralize what makes us individuals so that we can appear to be more of just the one personality, which can be really exhausting and mentally draining, and just it's not how we want to live. To front is when one alter's identity takes the forefront of the mind's awareness, so all of their thoughts, emotions, priorities, everything that makes the alter who they are comes to the front. So when we front, it is often just one of us. However, I'd say maybe even half the time, there's more than one of us fronting at a time, which is called co-fronting. We also experience something called blending, where it's kind of a combination of different alters. If it is only one alter fronting, most often we are at least co-conscious. So if an alter is co-conscious, they're aware of what's going on, but they're not in control. The fact that we're co-conscious so often is a big reason why we don't experience a lot of blackouts. When we are co-fronting or blended or co-conscious, this can either be a negative thing because there can be conflicting feelings between alters, whatever circumstances we're in, which can cause tension and confusion and a whole host of problems. Or if we can be on the same page about our priorities and work together as a team, it can be extremely helpful. This is really what we aim for. So when it comes to fronting, there's a term called gatekeeping. This is when one alter has control over who has access to the front. So our protector alter, Monk, is the ultimate gatekeeper, especially during moments of conflict. He's able to prevent other alters from coming to the front. However, oftentimes we're at least somewhat co-conscious. The other alters in the system can have some awareness of what's happening, but we're only able to be observers. So Monk gatekeeps most often during conflict, moments of high stress, depression, etc. Saint can gatekeep during social situations. It can even gatekeep Monk from coming to the front. This happens particularly in public or in situations where we have to be more agreeable for our own safety, which, as we've mentioned before, can cause some tension between Saint and Monk because, if someone's an asshole to us and Saint is fronting, then we'll just brush it off, we'll walk away. Whereas Monk would handle that kind of situation very differently. And there are moments where it is problematic for Saint to front, because sometimes we do need to speak up and voice our feelings and stand up for ourselves, So Saint and Monk are working on being on the same page and working more as a team. It can just be hard to know how to respond in moments like that, which is why Saint is just automatically passive and just kind of lets things slide. So the other alters in the system don't have gatekeeping abilities. However, they are prone to hyperfixations, which can prevent other alters from coming to the front. Like, for example, Seven and Jinx, if they're really involved in some creative pursuit or whatever, it can be very difficult for Saint to come to the front and take care of responsibilities and stuff. So functional multiplicity will look different for every system, but generally it means for the members of the system to be on the same page about the system's overall priorities in life, while also balancing the needs and desires of everyone in the system. Instead of working against each other, it is to become a team. For many systems, integrating into one identity is not desirable. For some systems, That is the goal, and that is 100% valid, but the goal of functional multiplicity is just as valid. For many, the system is like an inner family, and in many ways having that internal family can be a real benefit. After all, alters often form in order to overcome challenges in life. And so even when some of those obstacles of DID like amnesia and delusions can be overcome, having that internal family is still very important to many systems and can be very, very helpful. We aim to be on the same page about our career goals, parenting, relationships, spending habits, lifestyle, etc. Another thing we try to do as an inner family is to invite others to come to the front to do things that we love, like making art or singing or listening to music or interacting with others. We find it very important to give each other the opportunity to explore those things that we love as individuals, because we all deserve that. So the inner family dynamic can look so different from system to system. For us, we're very clairvoyant and clairsentient. So to be clairvoyant means to be more visual. And clairsentience means like feeling. So we often feel each other's presence and emotions and the thoughts, but more in like feeling form, not necessarily verbally, sometimes verbally, but we're also a very visual person. I would say maybe even more visual than clairsentient. Our imagination has always been very strong and important to us. And ever since we were a kid, we would just be lost in imaginary worlds and followed around by just like a herd of imaginary friends at all times. So we've always kind of had that visual predisposition. So when we're co-con, if we want to interact with other alters, we often do so by, I want to say visualizing the other alters next to the body, but it's more like the alter who is being visualized controls how we visualize them, if that makes sense. It's really confusing. Say we were fronting as Jinx, and Jinx is having a really hard time feeling very, very emotional and sensitive. Saint might be co-con with Jinx and be visualized next to Jinx as being very nurturing, getting very close and comforting, and that kind of thing. Or just for the company or the fun of it. It can be really therapeutic and a great way to bond and communicate with each other. So we'll do this in both the outer world, visualizing the altar juxtapositioned on top of outer reality, or we occasionally, maybe during meditation, we will go on kind of a visual journey with each other. So as an inner family, we try our best to frequently check in with each other. We do so through visualization, feeling, sensing each other's emotions and presence. We also do a practice called automatic writing, which we want to make an entire video about, to be honest, but it's essentially to just journal with the other alter. I think it's important to know what your language is, I guess, or your clair sense, where we are very clairvoyant and clairsentient. It helps to know what your dominant experience of the mind is when you're exploring the mind. So something that's maybe more unique about our system is that we all kind of identify as otherkin, I suppose. So we all have our animalistic forms, but we also all have an anthropomorphic kind of version of that form. So for example, Monk is a black wolf. When he's being visualized next to the body, he might be visualized as a black wolf, but he could also be visualized as pretty much human, minus maybe a pair of ears and a tail. I'm not going to go too in depth about how each of us identify in that way. In this video, I'll definitely save that for a video of its own. But we will say that we believe there are several reasons why we are this way. We've always loved mythical creatures. Something about the mystery and the power and the strength in that has always been really appealing to us. And we never really fully related to the experience of being human. We never really felt like we fit in. Instead, we spent a lot of our life just kind of lost in our imagination, and where our imagination was dominated by mythical creatures, it kind of just naturally ended up being this way. Identity is a very mysterious and obviously very personal thing. It can manifest in different ways for everyone. What's important is that we allow ourselves to explore and to be our authentic selves. So that's it for today's video. I hope that this has helped to give some clarity about what the plural experience can be like. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Can't wait to see you next time. Until then, hail and farewell.